Morning, Robert Scribbler here with the this Friday for Future Friday, February the 17th edition of the OBX Wave Report, where I am your reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And I am right now in the process of upgrading our capabilities for reporting for you guys. I've got the GoPro yesterday. I'm learning a little bit about how to use it. I've got the bite mount set up, and the surfboard mount is right now adhering to the surfboard. We still have like 12 hours left before that's supposed to be properly sealed, so we won't be getting out in the water with that today. But what we might do, depending on wave conditions, is get out on the bodyboard with the bite mount and do a quick little video for you guys out in the waters. And let's see. Oh, and I also have a little handheld mount here. I don't have the GoPro on it, but this little thingy, which is pretty cool. I got some video on the bike last night, but it wasn't very high quality, so I didn't upload it to the YouTubes or anything or stream it. But nonetheless, we're learning how to use this. Still haven't quite gotten the stabilization down yet, but we're working on that. We'll learn. We'll get that GoPro up and running. It doesn't seem too crazy complex, and we'll get out to the beaches and get some GoPro shots for you today. In any case, either from a board or from the beach. But nonetheless, today along the Outer Banks, it's getting cloudy. The winds are picking up from the southwest. Down at Jeanette's, it looks like the winds are getting pretty strong. Let's go ahead and look at this. Looks like we had some gusts up to nearly 30 miles per hour this morning. Temperatures in the Outer Banks are still warm. I've got the window open right now. I feel very warm. It says it's 65 degrees at Jeanette's Pier. It feels very warm here in my home with the window open. So very warm weather, warm muggy weather ahead of this front, and you can see in this global forecast system model, the winds coming in from the southwest and the warm temperatures, even if you just go a little bit inland, it's in the middle to upper 70s. Out ahead of the front and behind the front is much cooler. And so the dividing line is right there. You can see it just on the map. It's just, that's where the temperatures are changing as you get the oranges ahead of the front. That's the 70s and 80s down here in the Florida, and then behind the front much cooler, 40s and the upper 30s and into the 50s in some locations. So you got that cold air moving in behind the front, warm air moving up ahead of it. And in that clash of the cold and the warm with the moisture feeding in from the Gulf and the much warmer than normal Gulf and much warmer than normal North Atlantic. And wow, look at that high pressure. Sorry, I'm just sometimes amazed by the swirling of the atmosphere. But yeah, there's a big old powerful high pressure out here digging into that Gulf moisture and the Atlantic moisture of the much warmer than normal waters of the nearby region here. And now we've got some thunderstorms firing along this line, and those storms are going to move in through the area. I don't know if we're going to get actual thunder boomers, but there are some. The convective analysis and the meso analysis doesn't show anything too crazy as far as like really strong storms here. So it shouldn't be too nuts, although might get some pretty heavy rain, maybe a rumble of thunder or two as we head on into the day. But I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the NOAA satellite shot, the NOAA Geo composite, and you can see, I'm just going to update. You can see that front, it's very vivid in the NOAA Geo color composite here, with the front dipping all the way down to Mexico, just trailing all the way across that much warmer than normal Gulf, tapping into that moisture, tapping into the Atlantic moisture, and then streaming on up the US East Coast and all the way up into the Northeast with colder air moving in behind it with looks like some snows moving in behind it, at least lake effect from the Great Lakes. You see those streamers, that's pretty indicative of some lake effect snows coming in behind the front here. And looking at the enhanced cloud tops, showing the colder cloud tops, you do see those higher cloud tops streaming in over the mid-Atlantic here in North Carolina with the thunderstorms. Some thunderstorms firing off, looks like over parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and then just rain up here in the Northeast. Out west, you've got an upper level low swirling offshore. There's a big dip in the jet stream starting to form over here on the west coast. I'm going to talk about that in the end of the video today, but it looks like there's just going to be a persistent dip in the jet stream over the next couple of weeks here, which is expected to bring stormier and cooler weather to the US West Coast. That's already happening. And we've got an upper level low swirling off of California, bringing in some wet weather and wet weather coming in through the Pacific Northwest. Some snows over Montana, looks like, and parts of Idaho, Wyoming. But yeah, overall main event right here, this front heading off the US East Coast, kicking up some storms and some gale force winds coming in from the southwest for the US East Coast. And I'm just going to zoom out, show you the rain shield for the front sweeping on through. Doesn't look like the thunderstorms are too powerful out to the west of us, but there's, we got some yellows in here. So we might have some thunderstorms moving in. It's worth noting that here in, well, just east of Manio in Nag's Head, we've got a gale warning up. We've got gale warnings up for the Pamlico Sound and for waters off of Hatteras Island, Ocracoke Island, and going all the way down to Wilmington. And this gale is going to be a southwesterly event primarily for today, with strong winds coming out ahead of the front from the southwest. And then as the front comes through, those winds are going to whip around to the north and northeast and northwest. And so for late today and into early tomorrow, we'll get some strong northerly winds as well. Waves are building in the south, and we're getting some wraparound swells, mainly coming in from the south and the southwest here for the northern beaches. And I'll talk a little bit more about the swells later. Looking at the National Weather Service marine monitor for off the U.S. northeast coast, and I'm just going to go back to the radar to show you where this is. I've been monitoring this region here because it's a major wave generator for the Outer Banks, and right now they've got a gale warning up. It's southwest gale, but it's going to turn toward the north and northeast out there as well, with some tall seas developing into Friday. And oh, is this updated? Hold on, let's update. There we go. With some tall seas developing today and into tonight, and then subsiding a little bit into Saturday and then into Sunday. So gale warning up for those waters. And looking at the NOAA quantitative prediction forecast for the next 7 days, we do note a tendency for storms to form offshore of the US East Coast, possible nor'easter type systems. We'll keep an eye on that. Looks like more tendency for precipitation for the northern tier of the Northeast and central US, with lighter precipitation south. Looks like there's going to be a high pressure influencing the south over the next week or two, with warmer than normal conditions focusing in on Florida and the US Southeast. And then out west, it looks like the mountain regions and the coastal regions are set up for heavier weather, particularly in through the peaks in the Rockies and the ridge lines in the Rockies here in the ranges, and then all along the Sierra Nevada range with looks like heavier precipitation, and then heavier precipitation for the coast running down from Seattle region all the way down to Northern California. Nothing too crazy predicted except for maybe some of the mountains up here in Washington. Might want to keep an eye on that for heavy snowfall. But it is worth noting that more precipitation is on the way for parts of California, particularly Northern and Central California and the mountain regions. All right, so let's get down to the coastline here in the Outer Banks and give you guys some observations, some direct observations of what's going on. And in fact, you know what? Let's go back to windy. I did want to show you the observations here from Jeanette's Pier according to Willy Weather. And right now temperatures are in the range of about 65 degrees at Jeanette's Pier. The reason why I'm using this is some of the observations I'm getting have not been accurate when it comes to temperature. And so I'm relying a little bit more on Willy Weather here. And looks like winds are pretty strong out of the southwest, coming in at 26.5 miles per hour with the gusts. So pretty strong winds. Swell is building in from the southeast. Looks like the swell is right around 4.5 feet. That does not appear to be translating to shore. Um, but I'm not sure if the wave monitors are quite up to date with regard to the swell and the onshore break. We'll get down to the beaches and get an observation. With those strong southwesterly winds, waves don't tend to make it to shore as much, so it is likely the wave reports are more accurate. All right, so getting down to the coast, let's do our observations. So at Jeanette's Pier right now, according to the wave monitors, it's about 1 to 2 foot. I'm going to put a little asterisk there because there is a swell coming in from the south and east at a rather high angle to the coastline, and that swell is 3 feet. And so we might get some breaking waves from that swell, but it's coming in at such a high angle that it might not be fully forming up. The primary swell is coming in from the southeast at about 7 seconds with those larger waves. And the secondary swell is getting knocked down. That's the one coming in from the east at about 9 seconds. That easterly swell is, or the swell coming in from the east and moving to the west, is less than a foot tall. So becoming less and less of a factor throughout the day with that southerly swell starting to dominate. Winds right now coming in out of the southwest at 22 miles per hour. That is an offshore flow. Air temperature is 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Getting my air temperature readings from a different source right now because the local monitors really aren't picking or the monitors aren't picking up the air temperature exactly right. It's much warmer often right now than what the some of the weather monitors are saying. Um, Ocean water temperature apparently in the range of about 50 degrees. So, and that's the way it's been over the past few days. Weather forecast for today, we're under gale warning. We don't have gale conditions yet, but we do have strong winds. Storms are expected to move in from the west. High today in the upper 60s. Moving on down the coast. So for most of the beaches out here, it looks like the swell, especially as you head north, with those southwest winds, swells getting blown out a little bit here. We do have a little bit of wraparound swell. And at Jeanette's, we've got probably some rideable waves, although with that swell coming in from the south, it's not going to be very pretty. And then moving on down to Rodant, the angle of the coastline changes here, so we get more of an easterly aspect. And the swell coming in from the south is a little bit more, has more height to it and possible more translation to the shore. It's worth noting that the wave monitors are saying that the present wave heights at Rodanthe are the same as Jeanette's Pier. In my opinion, the waves will probably be a little bit better down there. That swell coming in from the south is about 4 feet. But the wave monitors are saying the wave height is 1 to 2 on the shoreline. I'll put a little asterisk there. Some of those swells might wrap around and give you some bigger waves. It is worth noting though the swell is coming from the south. The cross shore current is going to be pretty strong with those strong southwest winds. And with that southerly flow, it might be pretty choppy. So it's probably not going to be the best rideable waves. Primary swell coming in from the south at 7 seconds. That's that 4-foot swell there. And then secondary swell at 10 seconds. That's coming in from the east. That's also getting knocked down by those southwest winds. Southwest winds are strong right now at Rodanthe, coming in at 27 miles per hour. Out of the southwest, air temperatures around 65 degrees Fahrenheit, ocean water temperatures around 50, with that Labrador current lately being more of a factor for the beaches. And at Rodanthe right now for the weather, we have a gale warning, storms moving in from the west. This is pretty much the case all up and down the Outer Banks today. And expected to high today in the upper 60s. Storm's probably coming in by like, I don't know, 3 or 4. Hopefully I'll get out to the beach before that. And then heading on down south to Buxton. Buxton is often the big wave spot of the Outer Banks. In all honesty, Billy Mitchell is probably the big wave spot. I actually didn't get a surf condition from Billy Mitchell, but or I didn't write a complete surf report, but I will say that over at Billy Mitchell right now, the waves are 5 foot plus, probably building. due to a very tall swell coming in from the south at about 8 feet. Now, it's worth noting that Buxton is getting a bit of a wraparound from these 8-foot swells coming in from the south. The wave monitors right now are saying the waves at Buxton are in the range of 3 to 4 feet. But with that building swell from the south, you might be getting a bit more, particularly since the swell coming in from the south is about 8 feet. Primary swell is coming in at 7 seconds. That's that big swell coming in from the south. There's a secondary swell coming in from the east. It's smaller than a foot. So the main swell is coming in from the south. Winds right now are coming out of the southwest at 28 miles per hour, which is a strong wind. Southwest, it's offshore for the east-facing beaches over here near the lighthouse. Air temperatures are 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures 57, much cooler than it has been down there at Buxton, but still warmer than beaches northward, although still a bit of that Labrador current influence down there at Buxton right now. And present weather forecast, again, Gale warning up, forecast Gale with storms moving in from the west. By this afternoon, expected highs in the upper 60s. And I did mention that Billy Mitchell has 5-foot plus waves right now with that tall swell coming in from the south with those southwest winds. South swell right now around 8 feet. I can show you that in the wave monitor. I think I'll just go ahead and show you that now. So looking at the waves near the shore here in the near offshore environment, 7.5 to, looks like more like 7 to 7.5 foot swell coming in from the south according to the wave monitor here. So right now, Billy Mitchell and Frisco having much larger waves due to those strong southwesterly winds, which are onshore down there on the south-facing beaches. All right, so that concludes our wrap-up of wave conditions for the Outer Banks, with those strong southwesterly winds coming in, kicking up to likely gale force later on today. Looking at our long-range outlook for temperatures and precipitation and storms, I do want to note that there's this big dip in the jet stream that is even forming right now across the US West, and this dip is expected to intensify. Further west over the Bering Sea, there's a big old ridge that's moving in. So what's happening is the dip is bringing in the Arctic air from the north, and the ridge over the Bering Sea is expected to bring warm air coming in from the south. We'll have to take a look at this dipole and see how powerful it becomes. We could have a big warm air invasion of the Arctic in the next 8 to 14 day time frame. So I'm going to keep a weather eye to that. That's worth noting if it does happen. But the front side of that ridge is a big old dip in the jet stream, and it's expected to bring stormy conditions to the US West and cold conditions to the US West. Over here in the east, we have a dominant high pressure system out here in the Atlantic that's bringing in winds from the south over much warmer than normal ocean waters, and that's expected to create a persistent condition of above normal temperatures for the US Southeast and moving on in through the Gulf Coast and Florida, with the much warmer than normal temperatures focusing in on Florida over the next 8 to 14 day time period. For precipitation, we're expected to see above normal precipitation in the Ohio River Valley, Tennessee, and Kentucky region, and then much above normal precipitation for parts of California in the 8 to 14 day time period. We'll have to see how that lines up. All right, looking at I did want to show you the jet stream. So right now, we've got this big dip in the jet stream that's running in across the US West. This is expected to persist for the US West and bring those colder temperatures and stormy conditions. And we've got this big ridge in the jet stream running up toward Alaska, and that is also expected to persist over the next 2 weeks. And I'm just going to go ahead and run the model to show you guys how the jet stream kind of progresses. I set into the Bering Sea, but it looks more like it's focusing on Canada and Alaska, at least in the near term. And then let's watch how this jet stream kind of, the ridge collapses a little bit, and then another ridge almost immediately forms over parts of the Aleutians and into the Bering Sea and into parts of Western Alaska. And it just, based on what the Climate Prediction Center models are showing, it does seem to me that the ridge will tend to form here in Western Alaska over the later period of the forecast, with a trough tending to form here in the West Coast. So with the trough, you're going to get those colder and stormier conditions. With that ridge, you're going to get warmer conditions, possibly a warm air invasion of the Arctic by next week. We'll keep an eye on it for you guys. All right, looking at the Storm Prediction Center forecast for thunderstorms here in the Outer Banks for today, where we have slightly elevated, just a marginally elevated thunderstorm kind of potential here as the front sweeps through, although nothing too severe expected. We'll keep a weather eye to it, but it doesn't appear that major thunderstorms are on the way. And then let's go ahead and look at the forecast model. So right now we've got this front that's moving across the US East, and that is expected to sweep on through late today and into early tomorrow. By tomorrow, we're going to get these northerly and it looks like northerly, maybe northwesterly winds coming in off the Atlantic. The swell is going to turn around and get larger from the north and east. So later in the day on Saturday, even with those colder conditions, we might have some rideable waves as the winds calm down, and we have that remnant swell. Although by Sunday timeframe, the swell is expected to get kind of smashed, which is kind of a bummer. So it's not expected to be as good. And then as we get into later in the day on Saturday and into Sunday, high pressure builds in. We're going to likely get warmer conditions as we get into the day on Sunday, and we get some weather impulses moving across the northern tier of the country, but nothing really major to talk about as we get on into Monday. A little impulse kind of riding on through the mid-Atlantic here and the Outer Banks region. For the rest of the U.S., we got a little low here near the Great Lakes and storminess out west with snows in the mountains, rains in the lower elevations. The benefits of live streaming. So when I have a little sneezing fit, I just have to I have to hit the mute button. But nonetheless, low pressure system kicking off some looks like heavy snows in the mountains by Monday and Tuesday, and possible heavy rains in the lower elevations out in the Pacific Northwest. And then that low kind of lingering with a persistent moisture flow moving into the Pacific Northwest into the day. Thank you, sweetie. She got me a little tissue here. Into the day on Wednesday, and with a stationary front dipping across parts of the mid-Atlantic just to the north of us, and we might get some stormy weather. Let's see. Actually, that looks like a kind of a warm front building in from Tuesday into Wednesday, and then heading off toward the northeast with a decent storm blowing up around the Great Lakes region and into the northeast. On Friday of next week, we got a little skip in the models here. So looks like this warm front's going to move up toward the north and east, and then by Friday there's going to be a storm forming. Just worth noting the persistent storminess out west, particularly for the Pacific Northwest from parts of Northern California on north through Washington. All right, so let's look at the wave models and getting back to the Outer Banks. Right now, we've got those southerly winds and the southwesterly winds kicking up a large swell that's coming in from the south. And the near offshore environment for the south-facing beaches, waves are in the range of 7 to 7.5, maybe even 8 feet. I've seen some 8-foot swells in some models, but not in this one. Swells in the near offshore environment off of Buxton in the 6.5-foot range and off of Jeanette's Pier in the 4.5-foot range. As we get into the day tomorrow, the front moves through, the winds whip around back to the north. I'm just curious, north and northwest here, and not too crazy strong, but strong enough. And on the ocean surface, looks like we've got significant wave heights predicted to be in the range of about 6 feet by tomorrow. And these waves might be pretty rideable. Air conditions will be colder with a I don't know, the ocean water is probably not going to warm up that much with those northwest winds. So 6 foot significant wave heights off the east-facing beaches of the Outer Banks, probably decent rideable surf, at least through parts of the day on Saturday. As we get into Sunday, the swell does shift around to a more eastward orientation. So swell's coming in from the east, but looks rather small. Looks like the swell gets smashed down to around 2, maybe 3 feet, depending on how these translate to the coastline on Sunday. We could have 1 to 2 foot waves or nothing. So yeah, I would not expect great surf on Sunday. And then on into Monday, just kind of confused, relatively small swell in the range of 2 to 3 feet in the near offshore environment. Maybe some better waves down south. Doesn't look great, but possibly a better day on Monday. And then as we get into Tuesday, again, the swell becomes more predominant toward the south, with the south-facing beaches looking like they get some better waves, and the north-facing beaches, there's a 2 to 3 foot swell coming in from the south, but you're relying on that energy to wrap around, so likely relatively small as we get into the day on, I believe this is, yeah, so 18, 19, 20, 21, Tuesday, yep. And then Wednesday, we don't yet have a forecast for. So might be some decent waves tomorrow. Probably some rideable waves today with some chop. Sunday, not looking great. Monday, maybe a little better. Tuesday, not looking great. Hopefully this forecast will improve. Unfortunately, don't see much to indicate that. All right, so let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to? Nope. All right, so thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report, where we talked a lot about weather and waves. This is also a Friday for Future episode, but I'm going to focus more on Friday for Future in our next episode, which is a little bit of a special edition episode. And then we're going to get down to the coastline. Actually, depending on how my schedule works, I might have to do the Friday for Future special edition a little bit later because I've got some things I need to do. But in any case, on this Friday for Future, I do want to ask you to please do everything you can to help defend our coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning. And the primary driver of climate change is burning the fossil fuels and injecting heat trapping gases into the atmosphere. And the primary solution of climate change right now is rapidly transitioning to clean energy. And we've got the clean energy systems. We've got wind, we've got water, we've got solar. And we've got the electric vehicles that we can then plug into the wind, water, and solar and turn our carbon emissions to zero and possibly even net negative in the later term if we do the right things like help our forests and our oceans and possibly figure out a way to set up our material production so that we're actually pulling carbon out of the air to help produce our materials. So we can do this. The technologies are there. We can get to zero carbon emissions in our daily lives and in our society and our systems by simply producing electric vehicles and electric modes of transportation and other forms of electricity, just like electrifying everything. And then plugging that electricity into clean energy sources like wind, water, and solar. And the power of these new technologies is getting better and better as more investment and interest chases after it. And it's happening. So we can do it, but we've got to have the will. And we should be honest that, as we do it, we're doing it for protection of what we value, things like these beautiful coastlines where I live. And we're making a conscious choice to protect and save these beautiful places that so many of us gain so much richness from and enjoyment and a good life. So thank you for joining me for this Friday for Future session of the OBX Wave Report. I will be back with you shortly, both from the beaches and with a little special on Friday for Future.